A recent release on the Switch was Vengeful Guardian Moonrider. This retro-inspired action platformer comes from the team behind other retro-inspired modern games such as Odallus, Oniken and Blazing Chrome, all very good games in their own right, and follows a cyborg hell-bent on revenge against his creators. But should you join the uprising, or will the only one left feeling vengeful be your wallet? Well, I'm Glen Bolger, thank you to the publishing team for the review code, and now let's find out. So the story takes place in a dystopian future. The Moonrider Ninja Warrior is the latest tool created by a totalitarian state in order to keep its citizens in line. However, Moonrider opts to reject its intended purpose and instead goes on a rampage against the oppressive government, taking them down one by one. So gameplay wise, as mentioned briefly, Vengeful Guardian was created by Joymasher, who have a history of creating retro inspired titles, and this time they have decided to pay homage to the action games of the 16-bit era. I definitely got a flavour of games like Shinobi 3 and Hagane, as well as some mechanics from other games like Mega Man, and we'll look at this a bit more later. You'll make your way through a number of levels, mainly moving left to right, although there is some verticality at times too, taking out the enemies and navigating a number of hazards such as fire or electricity traps, using platforms or pipes that you can hang onto from above to avoid said death traps. As well as this, you will also have a wall jump mechanic seen in games going all the way back to the 8-bit classics such as Ninja Gaiden and Batman on the NES, and this ties into those moments of verticality mentioned earlier and gives Moonrider the sense of agility that a Ninja Warrior should emit. For your attacking options, you have a short range attack. Looks a little like the sword attack from Strider on the Mega Drive but on a smaller scale, and it can also be used to deflect enemy bullets. Plus you are able to perform a powerful kick attack by pressing the attack button and hitting down whilst in the air. As well as this, you have your special attack, which uses up some of your special meter when used, and whilst you start with a standard special weapon called the Moon Spear, you will gain a new weapon after defeating every main boss from stage 2 onwards, and can then cycle through these at any point, choosing the one that suits your playstyle or the situation you currently find yourself in. This acquiring of a boss's weapon is very reminiscent of the Mega Man series, and to keep with this theme, aside from the first and last stages, you can also play the other 6 in any order you want. I couldn't quite tell if there was a good order to do them in. What I mean by this is whether one boss's special weapon is particularly good against another boss, again like in Mega Man. I don't think that is the case here, it wasn't obviously so at least. I liked the amount of variety within the levels, with both a nice mixture of locations and to a lesser extent gameplay mechanics, but there are enough that the stages feel unique from one another. With the exception of the final stage, there are 2 levels per stage, although they almost flow together as one large stage. The first level ends with a mini boss fight and the second with the main boss fight, and this is a good time to talk about the checkpoint system, as this is something that modern retro inspired games can sometimes get wrong, sticking with tropes used in the games that inspired them that don't marry well with a busy adult's life, as they may once have done for a child with much more free time back in the 80s and 90s. Thankfully, Vengeful Guardian Moonrider sidesteps this potential pitfall and is very fair, whilst keeping the challenge as it should be. Even if you do get a game over, you don't go back to the very start of a stage, and I felt the checkpoint placement was pretty much spot on, to be fair. Throughout levels there are also a number of power modules to locate. You have 2 spaces on your suit for these and can equip the ones you want once you have found them. These are really varied and again can change the game up quite a bit. For example, you have an early one which lessens the damage you take but caps the end of stage rank you can get to a B, but there are others which will regenerate your health periodically, add a second jump, or even kill you with one hit for those wanting an extra challenge. I really liked how varied these were, and having to find them in the level somewhere adds some replayability. Moving on to controls, and for the most part they are absolutely fine. You will be able to perform the moves you need to get by fairly easily, and there is a nice sense of fluidity due to having a run attack move. Sometimes having to run and jump from a smaller platform could be a little frustrating, especially when trying to go straight into a wall jump, and due to your sprite's size you do feel a little more awkward to move than the Ninja Warrior title bestowed upon you would have you believe. On the whole though, they are fine. Gameplay is a good blend of old school style fused with newer mechanics, and it scores 17 out of 20. Controls are relatively fluid but can still feel slightly clunky at times, and they get 15 out of 20. As mentioned already, the art style here is inspired by the 16-bit era. It portrays a dingy dystopian future, one full of fantastical state-of-the-art technology juxtaposed against a crumbling and dilapidated Earth decaying before your very eyes. To accentuate this, the colour palette is kept fairly subdued with a lot of browns and greys, albeit with a piercing colour within the backgrounds as you move through what was once presumably quite a beautiful place. That's not the case in all levels though, with some levels taking place in the air or in forested areas, which leads to pastel greens and yellows or the dusty reds of a lunar base, and this does add some welcome variety to the overall aesthetic. The stage bosses range from screen-filling mechanical horrors to the other ninja warriors who each look different enough to one another, and there is definitely a hint of H.R. Geiger in the forms of some of these bosses, with that strangely beautiful fusion of organic and mechanical life forms evident in their design. Performance wise, I didn't experience any slowdown at all, and the game ran well in both handheld and docked mode. In terms of the audio, the soundtrack is certainly befitting of the on-screen action and has a techno feel to it that carries through most levels. This is fused quite nicely with an East Asian flavour, which can be heard in both the music itself but also in some of the smaller sound bites, such as collecting power-ups. I did feel that a few of the levels did sound quite similar to one another, whereas a few that were a bit different, the Sky stage being a good example of this, definitely stood out more in my memory because of it. Visuals harken back to the early 90s and replicate the style seen on 16-bit systems well. They get 17 out of 20. Audio is of a good standard, but a tad more variety in some stages would have been welcomed. They get 16 out of 20. Vengeful Guardian Moonrider costs £13.99 and regional equivalents are on your screen now. Like games from the era it looks to emulate, it can be beaten in around 2 hours, but I would estimate that on average most people will finish it in anywhere between this time and about 6 hours depending on your skill level. Being able to play the levels in any order is always a nice touch and prevents potential frustration, as does the balanced checkpoint system, and there is some replayability here due to the hidden power modules to find and then experimenting with them in terms of how they change the experience. About $11.99 would have been the sweet spot for me, but production values are high to be fair, and on balance, value gets 16 out of 20. To conclude, Vengeful Guardian Moonrider strikes a nice balance between old and new, wearing its old school inspirations proudly, but not being afraid to update certain mechanics or unfair tropes from back in the day. Some of the movements and actions are a little awkward, namely the run and jump, and you could argue that it is fairly derivative in terms of its core gameplay, but that doesn't make it any less fun, and it's a great game to blast through a level of when you have some spare time, especially as the levels can be selected in any order for the most part. Vengeful Guardian Moonrider gets a SwitchUp score of 81%. Thank you everybody for watching this review, I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Is this a game you are looking to pick up? Does it interest you at all? Please do let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credit to pick this one up or any other game for that matter, you can do so using our website switchup.gg. You can currently save yourself 10% off the price by using the code SwitchUp. There's also a link down there to Play Asia if you're looking to import any games. Again, use the link, use the code stated, and you can get yourself 5% off of an order from there. A quick thank you to our Patreons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.